When was it where you started to see, or some of the lessons you learned from photography that transferred over to social media? Or that's one part of the question. The other part is like, when do you start to even think of those two things kind of merging in that direction?
It's interesting because photography is a behind the camera thing, and most photographers are introverts. And so it's actually very boring. Photography is boring. The creating of the photo is exciting, but observing photography is boring. So, but for me, one of my strengths wasn't necessarily that I was the best technician, but I loved it so much, and I have a lot of energy that the people I was photographing got caught up in that. So it was a high energy kind of experience. I had the headshot career. It became very successful because I was the first one to do this, and I started getting a lot of clients. But I was feeling a little artistically unfulfilled because it was the same thing every day, even though I loved it, similar stuff. And I was watching my son, he was 4, I think, 3 or 4, play with his toy bus. And his level of enthusiasm for this small moment in his life made me realize, wow, we just skip over that stuff when we get older. And I was sitting there like, when is this gonna be over? Because I'm exhausted and I'm hungry. And I just stopped and I said, oh no, this is life. Stitching a bunch of little moments like this together, that's life. And I thought, how can I do a photo project like that? And it happens that day I'd photographed my first dancer. And I said, oh, I know what I could do. I could recreate everyday moments, but use dancers to show the beauty in those moments. Wow. Suddenly this like idea, dancers among us, popped into my head. And I knew no dancers, but I called this one guy. I said, I just have this crazy idea. Can you get your company, happened to be the best company in New York City, Paul Taylor Dance Company. They spent the summer walking around New York City with me as I was trying to figure out, how do you shoot dance? How do you get the leap, all this stuff. And it became something that was unique. And that was my first experience with social media, because Facebook, it started going viral on Facebook. And then, I mean, whole nother podcast, we could talk about how to get a book published. But to speed through it, after a lot of work, it got published and became a New York Times bestseller. Wow. And it was about celebrating everyday moments and showing the beauty of those moments. Because the way I always see it is like, life is quick, you know? And I want it to be long. So how do I make a quick life long is by really embracing and celebrating all the moments rather than just the big ones, and not speeding through anything. And this was my way of showing that. And I always think of my books, 4 of them, as lessons to my kids. So that each one represents a different lesson that I want them, life lesson I want them to take with them.
That's really beautiful. Yeah. And you know, there's so many young people out there, or even older people, that they have these passions that they don't really know how to build a career off of that, right? Especially more artistic passion. So, you know, someone might want to be a writer that's listening to this. Someone might want to be a musician. Someone might want to draw or be a dancer. How do you start to turn that into being a lucrative career? I remember you sharing a story with me that really touched me about how in the very beginning of your career as a photographer, you would do it for free, and you wouldn't be making any money at all for a very long time. And then that moment that you actually were able to charge something,